Hi, welcome back to the Rebuilt Parish podcast. I'm so excited for you to learn from this leader that we've brought in today. Maria Politano has been a member at Church of the Nativity for 28 years. She's been serving in ministry there for a long time, and before retiring, served in ministry at Rebuilt as well. Now that she's retired from the federal government, she came on board as a staff member at Rebuilt, where she is training coaches. She's helping to coach 4 different parishes, and she teaches our ministers course. Maria is a wealth of information. I can't wait for you to hear her personal testimony when it talks about serving in ministry. And you are just going to hear so many practical tips for starting ministry and building ministry and sustaining it in your parish. Here we go. Well, hey there, Maria. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited for everyone to get the opportunity to learn from you.
Oh, Melissa, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
Well, I know that you have been a parishioner at Nativity for a long time. When you retired from your main career, you came on board to the Rebuilt team as a staff position, but I know that you served in ministry as a coach as well for years before joining our team. So could you please just let everybody get to know you a little bit and share a bit about your background?
So I did retire from the federal government just this past year, where I did a lot of leadership training and I did coaching there. And I'm really excited to be part of the Rebuilt team, doing coaching with the Rebuilt team as well. I coach 4 parishes and I do some leadership coaching, one-on-one coaching. And I also am a teacher. So I teach our leadership courses and I help develop our courses, including a recent ministry course that we developed. So I'm really excited about this because ministry has a special place in my heart. I'm a co-lead for the greeter ministry at Nativity, and I've been involved in several ministries there. And I've been at Nativity for 28 years now. So really, ministry has a really special place for me in my role at Nativity.
Well, we definitely brought the right person on for this conversation, and I know people are going to get so much value for this. So talk to us a little bit. We're talking through that grow wider anchor, that grow deeper anchor right now. So talk to us about, why is ministry such a critical part of discipleship? What makes serving in ministry so important?
So I think that's a great question, Melissa. And I think serving in ministry, you're really modeling Christ's behavior and his example of humility and love, right? And it really deepens your own spiritual growth. I know it has for me in serving in ministry. It just helps me to deepen my faith all the time as I'm able to share my gifts, like my gifts for doing this role with Rebuilt, for coaching and for teaching. It helps me share my gifts with other people and then hopefully make their lives better and bring them into a relationship with Christ that maybe they didn't have as deep a relationship before. I know I didn't personally have that deep of a relationship until I started getting involved in ministry and really taking it deeper for myself.
Wow. Well, can you share maybe just a little bit about what you got out of it? So before you came on staff, talk to us about what that was like serving and what you got out of it and what you got to see happen as a result of your service.
I will just say, I'm, like I said, I'm the co-lead for the greeters, but I started initially just as a greeter, greeting at the door. And I got so much out of that, just welcoming people and making them smile and getting to know them by being there, just by having that interaction with them and changing someone's day, right? You can totally change someone's day with a smile and with a welcome and with a comment, whatever it might be. So sort of being there for them. And then as I became the co-lead for the greeters, really getting to know the other ministers and really getting to care for them. And so it's really meant a lot to me personally, but it also helped me get through a really trying time in my own life. I was diagnosed with cancer in 2016, and getting deeper involved in my ministries is what allowed me to get through that time in my life. It really allowed me to focus on something else and to focus on other people, which is so important when you're going through something challenging, right? To be able to share and give to other people and give them all the support that I had. So my church family and my faith were so deep at that point that it allowed me to really get through that really trying time, and other trying times, during my life. So really, it means so much to me, and it gives me energy for the whole week. I go in on Sunday and I get to greet and I get to see people and I get to see them smile back, and, I get to see how it makes their day. And then that gives me energy to get through my whole week.
Wow, what a testimony, Maria. And I have to say, I got the opportunity to spend a weekend at Nativity with you a few weeks ago, and just to see the impact that you've made on that team by getting to know them. I mean, just the hugs and the smiles and the trust that's there. You have built such a cohesive team. It's just, everyone is just so excited. And then looking at how those greeters interact with people as they walk in the door at Nativity, it was just a beautiful experience to get to see. So I love that by you pouring into them, you've made something incredible happen there, but they poured into you just as much to help you get through that trying time.
Absolutely. And I think, your point is really important. When you pour into them, it gives them the energy to pour into others.
Yes.
So it's really contagious, right? Serving in ministry, it really becomes contagious, and people want to get involved and be part of that.
Definitely. Now, we've talked about some of those benefits that you can have on others and that by serving in ministry can have on you. Where can we tie this into Scripture? Where in Scripture do we see the importance of serving in ministry as part of discipleship?
There's two scriptures that sort of speak to me on this. The first one is James 2:17, and that says, "Faith by itself is not accompanied by, if not accompanied by action, is dead." And so really your true faith is demonstrated through service to others. And that sort of energizes your own faith, right? As I said, it just kind of really helps you grow deeper as well. And then the other scripture I think that speaks to this is 1 Corinthians 12:4-7. "There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. Now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is part of it." And I think that really just embodies the whole thing about serving and why that's so important.
Yes, I love that. In serving with where your spiritual gifts are right there. So serving doesn't have to be hard. It should come naturally if you're serving within the gifting that you've gotten from the Holy Spirit.
That is so true.
Well, Maria, I think sometimes people may get a little confused about the difference between serving in ministry and missions. Could you maybe help to dispel that? How would you explain the difference between serving in ministry and serving in missions?
Sure. So I think that the best way to describe that is serving in ministry is typically referring to something you're doing in your own parish. You're focusing on the needs of your immediate congregation or the immediate community around your congregation and your parish, trying to grow wider maybe and trying to bring more people to church, but in your own community church. Whereas serving in missions really goes beyond that local community. It sometimes crosses cultural and geographical boundaries, and you really are going to spread the gospel and also maybe provide some kind of aid or support in another community so that you're just really spreading wider than your own boundaries. Very often helping the larger community even. So at Nativity, we do missions globally, but we also do them right here in Baltimore City.
Very cool. Well, I want to just shift gears a little bit. And I know that as the co-lead, you've got example as boots on the ground, like you've got that experience being boots on the ground here with getting people involved. But I'd also love to know how you've helped some of those parishes that you're coaching and teaching on identifying parishioners who might be interested in serving. What have you seen and done, and what have you helped other parishes do?
Yeah, so this is a common topic we talk about in coaching, right? So there's a couple methods of doing that, and this is what we sort of coach parishes through. First of all, the message from the pulpit is so important. You want to build a culture of service through consistent communication, the importance and the impact of serving, and you want to mention it many, many times. It's not once and done, right? It's not one message and then it's done. So using your homilies and a message series can really encourage them, and then maybe having a way for them to sign up. It might be a ministry push, or it might just be a website, or However, they can then sign up if they're moved by that message. Also, really getting to know people, spending time on the weekend, building relationships and making a personal invitation. Think about how you would feel if you got to know somebody on the staff at your parish and then they invited you to serve in ministry because they saw something in you. That personal invitation can be so motivating. And really, that's what's worked for most of our parishes in coaching. When we say to them, they say, oh, we don't have anyone. And we say, look for someone, get to know someone, and ask them if they can help you. And they never say no. It's amazing. We had several parishes who wanted to establish a welcome desk, and they needed someone to serve at that welcome desk. And they were putting staff members behind it. And we said, why don't you find someone with a nice, bright smile, who's always welcoming, who's always there, and ask them if they'd be willing to support that. And then they jump right in, and they end up taking over and doing amazing things at those welcome desks, making people feel so welcome and so comforted when they come in. So getting to know people is important. Also, sometimes getting started is hard, right? So find a few enthusiastic people and then get them serving and then ask them to invite others to join them. They can invite their friends, they can invite their family. And then finally, sharing impact stories, right? Testimonials. What's the impact that serving has had on your life? And can you maybe share that? Maybe it's a video that you show either at Mass or that you send out in a flock note that describes somebody's experience, kind of like I described my experience, right? Those testimonies are so powerful. And when I've shared my testimony in the past, people have come to me and said, wow, I really identified with what you said. How can I get involved? So I think those testimonies are also really helpful. I think the other thing that we've done with parishes that we're coaching is we go and visit them.
Yes.
So we go there, we demonstrate what we're talking about. We help train their people. We help explain the why behind the things that you're doing, why every ministry position is really also hospitality, right? No matter what their role is, no matter if they're in front of the scenes or behind the scenes, they're making something happen that's inviting and allowing people to come to their parish and feel welcome.
Yes, I love that. I think that's something that's so cool about what we do with coaching is that we do walk alongside parishes and we help them and we model that, but then also show them the how and give them the tools that they need. And I know that the parishes you're coaching especially have had tremendous success in building their ministries. So I think sometimes people might worry that, we're being I feel like I'm being too pushy, or how do I make sure that I am not pressuring someone to join? Can you just explain a little bit about that fine line between asking, but without making the person feel pressured?
Yeah, this is a common question that we get, right? How do I make someone not feel like they have to do it just because I asked, or they feel like they're being pressured and that pushes them away? So, I mentioned that I'm the co-lead for our greeter team. So a lot of times the way that I've encouraged people to join ministry is, first of all, I'm there on the weekends. So I meet them, I see them repeatedly, I talk with them, I build a little bit of a relationship with them. And they always say how they feel so welcome when they come in. And then I might say something like, you have such a beautiful smile and such a welcoming way. Would you ever consider joining the greeter team? We could really use someone like you, because they often think they see greeters there. You don't need anyone.
Right.
And then I would just say, let me know if you ever want to talk about it. And 9 times out of 10, they come back and want to talk about it. Right.
How would I have
time? How would I have time to do it? How would I, but it takes time, right? That's not something you do the first time you meet someone.
Right.
Also offering them, if they say, oh, I'm so busy, I don't know how I would have time. I would love to do it, but I don't know how I could. You could do it just once a month or at a frequency that works for you. We have people who greet for us who sometimes, that are retired, that sometimes are out of the state for multiple months at a time. They only greet on the months that they're here, and they pick the days that they want to do it, right? So we allow scheduling that's flexible. But we have other ministries too, ministries that you can do during the week, if not available on the weekends. There's so many ways that they can get involved. And so showing them that they can use their gifts and explaining to them that there's many options for things they could do sometimes will help you get over that hump without them feeling too pressured.
Definitely. Well, I love that you've already shared one of those ways to help overcome objectives too, because some people might be reluctant to serve and they might think, oh my gosh, I have to be here every single weekend at all of the masses. And so I love that you've already shared with us that that's one objective to overcome. What about when you get the objective, and I'm sure your parishes have gotten this too, of I don't feel qualified. I don't feel like I could do this. How are you coaching your parishes to help their ministers and their leaders overcome this?
Yeah, a big part of that is, communication is so important, right? And training. Telling them that you're going to walk with them side by side. You're going to give them a mentor maybe, or a buddy or a partner, someone who's they can shadow someone. They can try it out and see how it feels for them. Giving them sort of an easier task in the beginning, or something that can really help sort of motivate them so that they can see that they are qualified. But also, again, asking them what their gifts are and what they think they are strong in, and then how can we use that gift in our ministry, right? So that they feel more comfortable. And then it builds up their confidence, reassuring them, observing what they've done and then letting them know how great they've done it, right? Reassuring them, thanking them, recognizing them as a win. We do pre-mass huddles, and we very often recognize our ministers as a win at the beginning of our pre-mass huddle. So we'll describe something that a minister did that they may think was small, but for our community, it's really big. And then that will help build their confidence.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love how you talk to them about how we'll provide a mentor for you and training. And that's so important. That's something that on the parish level, that can be tricky and scary for parish leaders too. Like, wait a second, I have to provide mentors and training for all of this. But Maria, can you just share how do you walk your parishes through setting up that type of infrastructure so that we can support these new volunteer ministers?
That's a great question, because it can feel daunting, right? It feels like you need an army of volunteers.
Yeah.
And in a way you kind of do, right? So we talk about building layers of leaders. So it's really about identifying a few people, a few of those volunteer ministers who can be leaders for your ministry, and then empowering them to be part of that solution. And then identifying different roles. So for example, at Nativity, we have what we call our cornerstone leadership team. So each ministry has a cornerstone team. We have 2 co-leads, so everything is not on one person to do all the time.
Love that.
And then we have what we call a 30-day coach, and that person follows up with anyone who's new to our ministry. So if it's the greeters or if it's the hosts, they follow up with them. They assist them as they're kind of learning, answer their questions, help them with getting the scheduling down, whatever it might be. And then we have shift directors at every mass. So once we've built that sort of volunteer group, we have someone who's responsible for making sure everything flows nicely and communicating at that particular mass. So every mass has a shift director, and then you have your greeters. So we have a scheduler. So we have what we call a shift administrator who helps with scheduling. So we have sort of a layers of leaders that we have in place that take the pressure off the staff a little bit to allow things to flow, and for them to also get to know their ministers and to get to work with them and support them. And they want to be part of those teams, right? Because those teams, they make them feel like they belong. They make them feel like they have a purpose. So they really want to be part of those teams.
Yes, that community piece is so important. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But I also want to ask you're talking here about a bigger team. And I know that one of the parishes you coach is a big parish. What recommendations would you have for a smaller parish who maybe they don't quite have enough people yet, where they need, 10 layers of leaders between the staff and the ministers? So what recommendations would you give to one of those smaller parishes just starting out?
Yeah, so just start with a few people, right?
Yeah.
And staff. Sometimes our smaller parishes, the staff doesn't work on the weekends. So having a few staff members who are there in conjunction with a few people that you've identified and invited to serve with you, right? You can start with even just your front door, 2 greeters, and maybe one is a volunteer and one is a staff member, and they kind of get started. And then as people see that and they sort of feel energized by that, they may want to step in and start volunteering as well to do it. That it doesn't look hard. So now maybe I can also do it. It doesn't take a lot of time. I can do it on the day I'm coming to Mass, right? I'm already coming to Mass. So sort of breaking down some of those barriers and sort of having some staff that are willing to help get it kickstarted and invite a few ministers to join them can be really powerful. And so you don't have to have a big staff or a big team to do that. Just one or two people can get it started.
Thank you. I think our parishes who are just starting out will really benefit from hearing that too, that, we don't want them to think like, oh my gosh, we're just starting out with this. So where do we begin? It doesn't have to look exactly like what Nativity has done. Every parish is going to look different. And I love what you're talking about, getting started with the staff. Start small and just model it and show that it's not hard and that anyone can do this as long as it's within their gifting. I love that. Well, I do want to talk about building this culture. So when you're coaching your parishes, how are you coaching them on building a service culture in their parish communities?
So a really big part of that starts with the message, right? It's going to start with your homilies. It's going to start with perhaps a message series, something that's going to engage them in how and help them understand how serving is actually how they can deepen their own faith, but also how they can help their parish community and help others in their community, but also help bring back those who aren't coming, right?
Yes.
So reaching wider and trying to bring people back to that relationship, but helping them also deepen their own relationship. Sometimes, like myself, I went to 12 years of Catholic school, but I don't think I had that deep relationship before. It was something that the church and the messaging helped me understand. And then it gave me a discipleship path to grow deeper. And one of those things on the path was serving. And that's really when I was able to start growing the deepest in my faith and really seeing God's work in action, right? And seeing that plan in action.
So you talk about starting with the message in the homily. What else along with that can then help promote this culture of service?
So the other thing is really the people, right? Engaging your staff, engaging any of your volunteers who are there. As you said earlier, right? Leading by example, modeling the behavior, right? So when they start to see that, and then a culture of appreciation for your ministers, having appreciation, having some sort of, it could be something as simple as, we sometimes will give out cupcakes as a thank you in the minister's suite to the ministers, or having maybe an event where you invite them to, and that can be any kind of event, but where you recognize and thank them at that event, right? It doesn't have to be big. It can be very small. An email, a thank you in person, recognizing and acknowledging the behaviors that you really want to see continue to grow. And then that, again, that's contagious. So people see it and then they start to model it in the same way. But then they also realize the sincerity of what you're talking about because they observe you appreciating that as well.
Yes. And one of the things you brought up reminded me that we need to talk about this today, and that's the minister suite. So we know in the books that Tom and Father Michael have said volunteers aren't free. Can you just talk a little bit about the minister suite, what it is, what goes on there, and the culture in there? Because seeing it in action is amazing. So I would just love for you to share with our listeners, what is it and what goes on there?
Yeah, so the minister suite is, and this doesn't, right now Nativity has a dedicated, it was built for a minister suite. Not every parish has that, but I've coached parishes who are finding space within their own building, no matter how little space they think they have. They're finding a dedicated space for this purpose, which is really great. One of the parishes I coach, they have a small library room where they have books that people can check out, and they're now making that their minister suite. It can be dual purpose, right? Yeah. It can be just a space that you carve out. There's another parish that we coach in their main concourse. They have a table to the side, and that's their ministry area. So it's where the ministers check in. It's where they come and they get the instructions of anything new that's happening that day. It's the pre-Mass huddle. It's where they can enjoy some fellowship time and get to talk to other ministers. In our case, we also have food. We have coffee there, so they can come in, have some breakfast, whatever it might be, something that allows them to spend some time in that room, get to know fellowship with the other ministers, and also get the instructions for what's happening new that day. And then we pray as a group. We pray to get our servant's heart in the right place as we prepare to serve. So we can, and we share wins. We share wins in that pre-huddle meeting. So it's just really a great way to make sure that you have everyone that you need to be at all the locations that you need, our Eucharistic ministers, our creative tech folks, our operations, our hosts, our greeters, whatever ministries you have, the liturgical ministers, we're all there together, praying together so that we can be ready to go out and greet and create that outrageous hospitality that we like to provide.
And I just have to say, seeing it in action is incredible. And within this minister suite, you've got volunteer ministers serving the other ministers too, help pouring coffee, getting the snacks out, talking, setting it all up, taking it down. I mean, it's just quite the thing to see. It's really amazing. And that culture inside of it is just incredible. You can see how excited everyone is to be there. There's hugs and handshakes and catching up, and then the prayer. It's incredible to see all of those people together just praying about the Mass, who's going to walk in the door, how they're going to help take care of them, and to just offer a great worship for the day. So it's just something to be seen. And I just love how you shared, Maria. It can be anything. It can be a table. It can be a small room you've got. It doesn't have to be this big minister suite, but just showing those volunteers that you've got a space for them, a place where we'll pray together, a place where we're going to communicate with you because that's so important. And then giving them the coffee and snacks and things to help them power through their shift. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about different demographics in serving. So how are you getting all of those different demographics? So when I was at Nativity, I got to see people of all ages, from teenagers serving to retirees serving. And everything in between. How do you engage all of these different demographics?
So this is really, I think, starts with getting to know people, right? Really getting to know them as they're coming through your doors, really getting to meet them. And again, we have all ages serving in ministry. And even the parishes that I've coached, that I've visited, have all ages. But again, it's that invitation, right? Letting them know that you can serve in this ministry. And it doesn't matter what age you are, right? There are some ministries that maybe are a little more challenging than others, but again, we have a ministry for everyone, right? There is a way that everyone can serve and do whatever is they are the most capable of doing. So it really helps also if they can see someone who looks like them serving in ministry. So if you're older and you see older people serving, if you're younger and you see younger people serving, right? If you see someone that looks like you and represents you, you know that you can also maybe do that. The message in the homily, too, is really important on this, right? It really can speak to this, and it can really help create that everyone can serve, no matter what your role or your ability is, whatever it is that you think you can do, there is a place for you and your gifts to be able to serve.
That's so good. Now, can you maybe give us an example from your own experience or from one of your parishes of how you've seen maybe a specific person, thrive in this, or a whole group, like maybe how you got young adults in or teenagers? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so we actually have a couple different scenarios maybe that I could share with you. But for example, we have sometimes a parent will serve with a child. So in greeting, that's an option, right? So if a parent and a child are serving together and that child continues to serve as they grow older, then they eventually can serve on their own. So we have a mother and daughter team who have been serving, I think, since her daughter was about 8 years old. Whoa. And she just loved being there. She loved doing it. People loved seeing her. All age people loved seeing her. The kids loved her. Older people loved her. Everyone just loved seeing her smile and her enthusiasm for greeting. And now she's in high school and she's actually stepping into a shift director role.
Oh,
We've
I love
invited
that.
her because we've observed her being a true leader because she knows what to do and how to do it. And she gently guides she trains some of our new people, right? She gently guides them into what they should be doing. And so now we've asked her to step into a leadership role, which not only made her excited, but it made the other greeters so excited to see a younger person stepping into that role. I can't tell you how many people have come and said how excited they are that she's been asked to do this role. So another scenario, again, we have some families with children with special needs. Those children can also serve with a parent and are serving with a parent. So when one family sees that happening and they realize that they can get involved with their family as well, it just helps us be able to see that, hey, there's different demographics that can do these roles and that are able to use their gifts, whatever they might be.
Oh, that's so good. What inspirational stories. That is so good. Thank you. Well, I do want to talk about how do we retain these volunteer ministers? Because we know that things change. So talk to us about some of those systems and structures that you encourage your parishes to put into place to just make sure that they're supporting and sustaining their volunteer ministers.
Yeah, so it really goes back to those layers of leaders, right? Finding a few key leaders who are going to help you with some of those systems, making it easy for them to get scheduling, helping them schedule when it works for them, not making them feel stressed out about that part of it, right? Providing them the training that they need, providing them a place they can go to ask questions and get support. Providing, even if it's just a staff member that's available on the weekend for them to go to and ask for assistance or whatever it might be, and to encourage them and to reinforce what they're doing. So really sort of sustaining that is a little bit of everyone's job, right? The other ministers, the volunteer leaders, the staff leaders. It sort of really helps reinforce what it is that you're trying to do and reminds them of the importance of their role. So anytime you can share some wins and keeping them in the loop, cascading information. We send weekly emails to all of our ministry teams. And again, at the pre-mass huddle, we share information about that weekend. But every week, we share what's coming in that week. We share what's happening that week, whether you're serving or not. So you sort of have a little bit of the insider in the know, right? You know what's coming. You know what to expect on that weekend. So I think it's just really important to also have a feedback loop where they can come to you and say, I noticed this, and I think it would be maybe better to consider doing it another way. And then you can evaluate that and sort of take their feedback and kind of use that as well.
That's so good. And talk to us a little bit about that ongoing training and development to just help them, on their path in ministry.
So one of the things that we really try to do is not like we want to give them training. We want to tell them, sort of what the role is and what some of the needs of the role are. But we don't want to be so strict in some of the rules that we give them that they're like, oh my gosh, it's just too much. It's too hard to follow these rules, right? Or it's that's not me. That's not my personality. Like I want to be able to put my own flair to that, right? So we try to give them the guidelines and we try to give them the tools and the support and the examples and then try to model that for them and then kind of give them the freedom to sort of make that role sort of their own, right? So different personalities can approach it in different ways and it can still be just as effective. So really, I think the training and the support, we want to be there for them, be able to answer their questions, be able to model and sort of relay to them the reasons behind why we like to do the way we do it, right? So, greeting isn't about just opening a door, but actually the act of pulling open that door is a very powerful invitation to someone to come in, makes them feel special. And so not everyone really realizes that. It sounds like, gosh, if I just have a door and I prop it open, I should be good to go.
Right.
Not really, right? Greeting is a very intentional act of making someone feel welcome. So, and making them feel special. And that's a way to do that. So we sort of explain the why behind it, and then we allow them to sort of use their own personality to guide that interaction.
That's so good. And another part of retaining our volunteer ministers is avoiding burnout. So when you're coaching parishes on this, what do you tell them to look for to make sure that, their volunteers aren't burning out? Or what can you do to help support them if you notice that they are?
Yeah, this is a really great question because we all know when you find somebody who's willing to help, you tend to go back to them over and over.
Yes.
You ask them to do everything, right? Because you know them and you can trust them and they're willing and so they can burn out. So I think a big part of that, the first thing that we tell them in coaching is to check in with people periodically. Check in with them in 6 months, check in with them in a year and ask them, how's it going? Have we asked you to do too much? Do you need to take a step back? Has something in your life changed? And this is maybe overwhelming for you at this moment in your life. You can always come back to this role, but do you need to take a step back from this role? Give them that space to say, because they don't want to let you down either, right? So give them that space to say, well, there's a lot going on in my life right now. My kids have reached a different age and I need to be more available to them. So I can't serve as many weekends as I was, or I have to serve in a different role right now. Give them that space to make those adjustments. We have a system for that at Nativity. They can actually do what we call a change form and fill out a form that says, I'd like to change ministries or temporarily be on hiatus from a ministry. I'm going to be busy for the next 4 months and I won't be able to serve. And I can block out those dates for 4 months and then come back to serving. But always leave that door open, right? They can come back to that service. But yeah, you really want to watch for burnout. I think a key way to tell that is sometimes in the person's mood and demeanor, right? Yeah. So if they were coming in and they were always full of energy and they were always happy and they were always ready to go, and now all of a sudden they're coming in and they seem a little more somber, it's time to ask them, is there something that's going on? Is this a time when you might be needing to take a step back because you have something else in your life that needs your focus right now?
Right. Wow. Well, Maria, a question that I do have too is, we talk about measurements a lot and, at Rebuild, and we like to be able to show what we're doing. So what kind of metrics and measurements do you use in volunteerism in parishes?
Yeah, so a great, we can measure a lot of things. We can count a lot of things. We can count how many ministers we have and if our ministries are growing. We can count those things. We can count how many new people are coming to the church because they feel welcome, right? But the really big impact is the intangible stuff. It's the wins, right? It's sharing the stories of how a volunteer minister has impacted somebody's life. So let me give you an example of a recent greeter, a new greeter that we have at Nativity. She had several months ago, she had a really bad week, right? She lost her mother that week. She had some bad things happen at work. She had some other stuff going in her life in her life that were just not right. And she had never been to Nativity, and she was sort of just out driving around trying to, wrap her head around what was happening. And she saw Nativity and she decided to wander in. She was in a really bad place. She was very down. And a greeter at the door recognized that something about her was down. Mm-hmm. And she gave her a little card. We have these little cards for a free item in our cafe. She gave her a little card for a free item in her cafe and wished her a good morning. And she said it changed the outcome of her entire day.
Wow.
And not only did it change the outcome of that day, but she started coming to Mass. And a few months later, she decided to become a greeter so she could change the outcome for other people.
Oh my gosh.
A story like that, that is the true impact, right? That's the true thing that you're measuring, but you can't count it.
Right. Oh my gosh. That is so good. So good. Well, I've got maybe just one or two more questions for you, Maria, because I know you just have so much goodness to give. But I know you talk about celebrating the wins within the ministry. How do you celebrate and share the successes with the entire parish about these ministries? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so there's some good ways to do that, right? I mentioned a little bit earlier, like making a video testimonial and then sharing that with the parish. And you can share that either during the Mass time, maybe during a message series, or even through a flock note, through a link, talking about it in your message. Again, that message from the pulpit is so important. Sharing a story like that about how someone's life can be transformed and how they can come back to that relationship with Christ and then share that with others. And even that quickly, right? How quickly something like that can change someone's life. That impact motivates other people. It motivates them every time. So I think that's a really important part of the puzzle, right? Is to really share that with the congregation. Make sure that they know those stories, even if it's a written story, right? And it could be in a flock note. Here's a letter we received from a parishioner whose lives were touched by serving in ministry, or the impact that a minister might have made on someone's life. I think it's really important to share that with your congregation.
Oh, that's huge. I love that. I mean, that story you shared about that new minister gave me chills. I can't even imagine what happens when you share that with the entire congregation. That's amazing. Well, Maria, since you are the resident expert, you are the one who teaches this course on ministry. What practical advice do you have? Just one last piece of advice for parishes looking to increase their volunteer ministers. And then the other side of that is, what rebuilt resources would you recommend for them?
Okay, so I think the main thing is to just sort of get started, right? So you remember our invest and invite strategy. It also works for ministers.
Yes.
So start with asking everyone on your team to try to meet 3 new people every week.
Oh, that's so good.
Spend some time meeting your congregation. This is not a hard one. And you're not even going to ask at this point. You're just going to spend some time meeting the congregation. And then after you do that, start with a few energetic and willing volunteers. Invite them to help you grow your ministries, because that energy is contagious. Yeah. So if you lead by example and then invite others to join you, and then they do the same, that will continue to grow. So I would say those are sort of the tips that you can do right away in any size parish.
So good.
Rebuilt resources. We actually have a great content library, and it has messages with series on serving, right? Really important to get some of those messages out there. And if you have small groups, doing a series and then having your small groups talk about it can be so powerful. The Rebuilt Faith book is another great way to do that, right? So we did Rebuilt Faith as a small group this past Lent. And what happened was, in the discussions, every week when I would go to my small group, there were several of us who were serving in ministry. We had some greeters and a host minister. And every week we would come filled with joy about a story of someone's life who was impacted, and we wanted to share it with the group. And then when we got to Rebuilt Faith and we talked about serving and the impact it has, the other members of our group said, every week you all come and you share these great stories. We want to be part of that. Every member of my small group has since joined a ministry. They are all actively serving, and they were not all serving. And even the ones that are out of state have joined some kind of online ministry because they felt so moved. So again, having that discussion and inspiring people is really powerful. So I would say using the content library or the Rebuilt Faith book is a great way to start.
Oh my gosh, that is wonderful. Maria, thank you so much. Everyone who's listening, thank you for tuning in today. Maria is just such an expert on this. She teaches the ministry course for our parishes that are in coaching with us. She's also working on a ministry course online. So look out for that coming out in the fall. But if you'd like to see how your parish is doing with growing deeper, we've got a free resource for you. If you go to rebuiltparish.com/deeper evaluation, and I'll link that in the show notes too, you'll have the opportunity to download this resource to help walk your parish through how you're doing. And then we've got some low-hanging fruit to help you start taking those actionable steps to get your parish moving. Well, Maria, thank you once again. Everyone, we are praying for you, and we are so grateful for you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It was such a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you.